I want to marry someone that looks like me, that comes from a similar background, because I want my kids to look like me. I want my grandkids to look like me.
But are you
Yeah, I do agree with Nick.
do have ideas that there shouldn't be interracial marriage.
Mhm.
I've seen those clips. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, it's not that I don't think there should be interracial marriage. I'm Catholic, so as you know, it's not a sin.
What I'm about to say might sound very controversial, but bear with me. There are a lot of people that do have the same thinking as Nick Fuentes. Now, I do not agree with the philosophy of which Nick Fuentes has, but let's be honest, a lot of people rather get married to their own race. A lot of people rather want their children to get married to their own race. Now, does that make you racist? I will leave you guys to comment. But let's think about it. Black people want their children to get married to other black people. White people want their children to get married to other white people. Asian people want their children to get married to other Asian people. Now, is there something wrong with that? No. I do not believe there's anything wrong with that because we have the same struggles in our race and we understand each other better in our race. Now, I'm not saying that interracial marriage shouldn't be allowed. It should definitely be allowed. But I can also understand the perspective of which Nick Fuentes comes from.
To be in an interracial marriage or relationship, but I am racist, I would say. I believe in the races. I believe there are white people and black people and Hispanics and Asians, and I think that it's a core part of our identity. It's who we are. And there's like this conservative reflex to say, we're colorblind. Race doesn't mean anything.
Do not get it twisted. Race does matter. It is very important to know that each race has their own experiences. White people have their own experiences. Black people have their own experiences. Latino people have their own experiences. And Asian people do have their own experiences. They have their own culture and their own jokes. Each race has it. So it does matter. Maybe that is the reason why it contributes to a lot of people saying that they rather want their children to get married to their own race.
And, Pat Buchanan said this. He said, it's not everything, but it isn't nothing. And I definitely lean more towards the latter, which is it really is a core part of who we are. Our culture, our heritage, our ancestors, our customs, all of it. It's not that I don't think that two people can fall in love from different races. Of course they can. And they have throughout history. And the races have mixed throughout history and assimilated. But for someone like myself, I always say on my show, it's just my value.
I dislike the idea of someone saying that you are racist because you want your children to get married to your own race. It's a matter of preference. My wife is from my home country and she is black as I am. Nick Fuentes wants the same thing for his own children. He wants his children to get married to white people. He wants to preserve his race and his culture. The same thing with an Asian person and a Latino person. There's nothing wrong with that. Let society not fool you to think that because you have that in you makes you racist. No.
I want to marry someone that looks like me, that comes from a similar background, because I want my kids to look like me. I want my grandkids to look like me.
But are you
Yeah, I do agree with Nick. I have a daughter. My daughter, if she decides to get married to a white person tomorrow, I wouldn't get mad. If she decides to get married to a Chinese person, I wouldn't get mad. If she decides to get married to a Latino person, I wouldn't get mad. But would I prefer she gets married to a black person? Absolutely. And that does not make me racist. It just means that I want my grandchildren to look like the way I look, like the way my daughter looks, like the way my wife looks.
sorry, I just want to make sure, did you say I'm a racialist or I'm a racist?
For a long time, I would say I'm racialist. Now I just say I'm racist.
Okay, so
You can clearly see that Nick Fuentes does not get fazed when people call him racist.
when you say you're racist, because these definitions get changed around, racist, anti-Semitism gets expanded. What do you mean when you say I'm a racist? Because I think most people watching this would go, if you are a racist
Right.
in the traditional sense of the term, why are you on this podcast, right? Wouldn't you just go, you know what, Candace is black and therefore I don't want to speak to her.
Right.
Certainly not going onto your show and saying, why won't Candace have me on? That doesn't really seem to line up with
Right.
the traditional sense of the idea racist. So
There are a lot of things that Nick Fuentes have said about black people that I do not like. But Nick Fuentes is sharing his opinion about how he feels, about how he sees himself, about what he believes in, and we should give him the platform to express that. Now, is Nick Fuentes racist? That is not for me to debate. That is for you guys to debate. But let me put a foundation clear for you people to see what I'm trying to put forward. Nick Fuentes believes that his race is superior. Does that make him a white supremacist? Hey, I'll let you both decide that. Let's continue. Now, Nick Fuentes believes that his race is superior. Why? Because he believes that the white people has made the technology that we have today. You can't deny that. A lot of the things that we have today are discovered by white people.
Yeah, and I'm using it. I'm being a little tongue in cheek. I mean, for the purpose of understanding, I'd say my views are I'm a racialist. But I do think that we need to deconstruct this idea of racism in the sense that, look, you're black, I'm white. It is what it is. For my entire life, people have been walking around on eggshells about the subject of race, about white people being racist. Can I say this? Can I say that? Can I have this opinion? And me,
some people may agree with me, some people may disagree with me, but I do believe that it is okay to criticize another race. It doesn't make you racist. If a bunch of black people are just shooting themselves, it's okay to criticize them. If a bunch of white people are killing themselves, it's okay to criticize them. For example, a lot of pedophilias are white. Hey, let's be honest. Let's criticize them for that. It's not wrong. It doesn't make me racist. It's just me saying my personal belief and what I've observed from this media and what I've been exposed to.
I'm sort of, Gavin McInnes said it like this. He said, you're kind of post-racist. You're sort of after this craze where everything was racist. It's sort of this recognition that we live in a heavily racial world. And, look, sometimes we have racist feelings. Racist feelings like I want to live in a white neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nick Fuentes is right. We have racist biased feelings towards other races.
I don't want to live in a black neighborhood. If they were all like you, obviously it'd be a different story. But when we think of a black neighborhood, we know what that means and why the property value is cheap.
But that's black.
You see, Nick is just expressing what he has been exposed to. And it's good that we have people like Nick out there speaking their mind, because then you can face him head on. Hopefully you pray that he might meet other kind of black people that might change his viewpoint.
American. So this is why I want to understand this idea better, because, and this is kind of something my cousin has said, which I guess you could say is a racist statement, but she says that white people in America are the white trash of white people in the world, meaning that like there's a special category of uniquely that you don't see when you're dealing with like white Americans here, that if you went across to just, like Switzerland, you wouldn't see this version of a white person necessarily, or this, you maybe went to the continent of Africa, you don't see this version of a black person either. Like even if you went to like to the tribes out in Africa that still exist, they would be a far cry from a black American living in a neighborhood in Compton. Right?
Let me just say, I do understand what Candace Owens is saying, and what she's saying is valid. If you go to Africa, you see that the black people in Africa are far different from the black people than in America. Why? It's because they're exposed to different things. They have different values, different culture, and different way of seeing life. Again, the way I am is not the same way someone from Gambia is.
Right. So I'm trying to understand if you think that it's all black people are like this, or if your world is kind of colored by this is what's going on in America. This has failed for 1,000 reasons. Welfarism has definitely, black people in 1940s stand up. My grandfather, I talk about that denigration and the corrosion of culture. Yeah. That's happening. White, black, whatever you want to name it. There is this intentional corrosion of culture. So do you think it's literally, well, this is just what a black person is when they come out? Or do you think that post welfare, LBJ, Great Society, this is what black Americans have become, and I have a right to respond to that and say that as a white man, I don't want to live there?
Can I just say both can be true at once? Maybe a lot of black people back in the days used to take care of their community. They used to look out for one another. And still, the white man didn't want to be with them. And the black people of today, they are a little bit crazy. They don't take up their neighborhood. They procreate without taking care of their children. They don't care about their community. And the white person doesn't want to be around them. So both can be true.
Well, I think it's more nature than people would like to believe. There's this classic tension of, is it nature, is it nurture, is it cultural, or is it intrinsic, is it racial? And I've always been on the latter side of this among conservatives. Conservatives like to say it's all culture. Black America is the way it is because of hip hop music and the Great Society and that kind of stuff. And I think the uncomfortable reality is a big part of it is intrinsic. One of the big arguments against the abolition of slavery in the 1860s is that, when Europeans colonized Africa, they hadn't discovered the wheel. There's no two-story buildings. There's no writing. There's no written language. Missionaries had to go to Africa in the last century and invent it for the African people because there's no recorded history. They didn't have writing.
So Egypt is not in Africa.
Well,
what is Nick Fuentes talking about? Ethiopia had a written language, a speaking language before the Italian came in. Their society was well civilized. It is well documented.
Egypt is a different race. The Egyptians were not black.
Okay, but you said when they went to Africa, so I just want to...
The interior of Africa in the late 19th century, scramble for Africa.
So we're now knocking Egypt out of Africa.
Well, Egypt is part of northern Africa, sub-Saharan Africa.
You said Africa, so I'm not trying to get a gotcha. I'm just responding. You're saying Africa.
Sure. Yeah.
It's in Africa. It's Egypt. It's kind of ridiculous to say there was no written language.
Well,
so I'm just trying to get you to
sure. Egyptians are not Africans.
If I'm not pushing back, the internet will. So
Egyptians are not racial Africans. When I say African, I'm saying sub-Saharan Africans.
Sub-Saharan, okay.
Black people because it is a different race.
To be honest, Candace Owens knows exactly what she's doing. When Nick Fuentes said African, he meant black people. He did not mean Arab. When you think of Arab, you think of more Egyptians.
In sub-Saharan Africa, and Europeans did not penetrate that until late 19th century, they didn't have any of this. To the extent that you have infrastructure in Africa, it's from the Muslims in the Sahel, in the Maghreb, in northern Africa, where the Arabs colonized. And then you had, Carthage and Egypt, you had ancient civilizations, but Sub-Saharan Africa, they didn't have that.
Now, you see, this is the problem I have with Nick's rhetoric. The fact that Nick speaks so well, it can be dangerous. Why? Because a lot of people would believe his rhetoric without reading. I believe that people should go out there and read about the history of Ethiopia and they will understand how developed Africa. Anyways, this is the end of the video. Take care, be safe, and bye.